If you visited my house at any point this week, then this is how you would have found me. Because for the last 3 days, I have been afflicted by some mystery illness. I call it a mystery, for I have no idea where it came from, nor do I have any idea what it is. However, today I come to you with my Victober TBR, and I thought that I would begin things dressed like this, for my father has described me as a spectre of death, the likes of which Dickens popularised in A Christmas Carol. Anyway, I have a fair few books that I wish to talk to you about today. And, well, this just doesn't seem fitting. So, one moment, please. Here's hoping that putting on a shirt is going to make me feel somewhat more human. Please, can we send out some sympathy to Charlie of Charlie Brook, who had to watch me descend into illness the other day as we were recording an author interview for her channel, which went online last night and is all about my writing of the new book, Royally Doris, which is the final book in the R. Doris series. And, well, I talk about it a lot there. Today we're not here to talk about that. Today we are here to talk about my Victober TBR. Victober is a month-long read-along, and I've had to write down the host this year. Hosted by Katie of Books and Things, Kate Howe, Marissa of Blatantly Bookish, Petra of Petra You, and Roz of Scallydandling About the Books. I believe that I have got all of the hosts there. I will be linking their original videos in the description, and if I haven't, I can but apologise. Victober is one of those read-alongs, well, it's a readathon really, that I look forward to every year, and I constantly talk about the fact that it does end up being the only time of the year when I read Victorian literature, despite the fact that the literature is there throughout the year. It just always enters my mind to read it in autumn. This year I'm particularly happy because the majority of my year seems to have been focused on awards. So at the start of the year it was the Women's Prize for Fiction, and then we've had the Booker Prize as well. So it's felt like I haven't really been getting to choose the books that I'm reading so much as just reading what these lists have told me to read, and I haven't particularly been enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to getting to pick and choose from all of the Victorian books that I have on my shelves. Which is why today I haven't really got a set TBR for the month. Last year and all of the years before it, I've set extremely, wildly ambitious TBRs for the month of October, only to fail. Last year, I had overtime. I've been back and watched my videos, and we had some successes with Dr. Thorne and Dracula and The Moonstone. Equally, we had some complete failures. The Woman in White. I have 4 books I want to read that I didn't read last year, and they are Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, Bleak House by Charles Dickens, we'll talk about this in a minute, and Framley Parsonage by Anthony Trollope. Bleak House is definitely not being read this month. I read 300 pages last year and I just do not have the wherewithal for this book at the moment. It's one that every time I try to read it, I just can't make head nor tail of it. And so I don't think I'm the reader for this book yet. I definitely want to get to The Picture of Dorian Gray. I want to read this one because the time of year it is. Yes, I'm talking about Halloween. Yes, I'm talking about the gothic aspect. And I'm talking about the fact that it's rather short. It doesn't fit any of the prompts. Last year, I just found that I was reading like one Victorian book a week and I really wanted to knuckle down and get some more books read. So this one got put to the wayside, but I would like to read this one. Now, Anthony Trollope. Once again, We are now a year on from reading Dr. Thorne, and I still haven't made it to Framley Parsonage. I keep making plans to read a book a month, to try and get through the 47 I have on my shelves. And since I read Dr. Thorne last year, I've read Harry Heathcote and The Way We Live Now. But I really enjoy Anthony Trollope. I think that the reason I haven't got to them is simply because of what I talked about before with the prize-winning books and choosing to read them over reading other fiction. And it's a discussion I want to have at a later date about the way I read, because I don't think that the way I've read this year has benefited me, because I felt like I've missed out on a lot of books that I wanted to get read this year, and that we're through the year already because we've only got 3 months left. And a lot of the books that I wanted to read, I haven't, based on reading those books. And I would really like to get the Barchester series finished so that I can start on the Palace novels. I know they're not connected, but I don't want to be in the middle of one series when I'm still reading another. So I'm definitely going to be reading Framley Parsonage this month. This is the Anthony Trollope that I want to read. There are some challenges. Will we meet the challenges? I do not know. The first thing is that there is the group read of The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. I have not read this one. Read Far From the Madding Crowd, read Tess of the D'Urbervilles. We've had A Pair of Blue Eyes, which I think is one of my least favourite Victorian novels, and one that I have described as the worst book known to man. But that's simply because of the way that Hardy treats his protagonist. I'm going to listen to The Mayor of Casterbridge as an audiobook. We ain't reading that. I don't even think that I'll be following along with the thing of 2 chapters a day. I think that I'm going to get towards the end of the month and just shove it on and listen to it. Katie's challenge was to read a Victorian Bildungsroman, or a coming-of-age story, which could amount to a few of them. And Kate's challenge was to read a book featuring disability. Marissa's challenge was to find a Victorian short story. Petra's challenge was to watch an adaptation, and Ros was to find some Victorian poetry. One book that I'm going to be reading is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Again, I'm going to be reading this one and listening to the audiobook. This is a book that I previously read many moons ago. Could be 10 or 11 years now. It's definitely been a while since I read this one, because I read this before the television adaptation that came out. It stars Gillian Anderson as Miss Havisham, and I'm thinking that this could work for both Kate's and Katie's challenge, and I will be buddy reading this with Charlie of Charlie Brooke. This might even be the one that I watch the adaptation of. I don't know. It's just that we do have the adaptation at work if I so wished. So then let's just talk about some books. Okay? Let's just get into this. Let's figure this out, right? Something that I started doing a few months ago was choosing books based on a random number generator. So I'd put in the amount of books I had left to read by Anthony Trollope, and then go through my shelves and pick which number that was. And one of those was The Belton Estate. And I've heard that this has a lot of female characters, and I have enjoyed seeing how Anthony Trollope writes female characters in comparison to the way in which other male writers of the time have done it. Now, he has had some aspects within his novels that I have disagreed with, but I will talk about them in my wrap-up for September. But I would like to read The Belton Estate as well, if I have the time. I think that something I've said about when it comes to Anthony Trollope is that I do seem to navigate towards him more during the autumnal winter months, and this is because of the sense his prose gives me. But I would like to try and get through some more of his books, and I do have some plans for that, although, as you know with me, all my plans usually go awry. Another book that I definitely want to read this October is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This comes from a number of reasons. Number one being that Elizabeth Gaskell is writing about the North here. Elizabeth Gaskell's house is in Manchester. Leo and Sarah visited it on the day that I met them months and months ago, and so many people have been recommending Gaskell to me over the years. So many local people claim almost ownership and pride over the Gaskell name, and yet I've only read Cranford, Sylvia's Lovers, and another book that I always forget. So I would really like to read this one and see what everyone's talking about. I have also got the audiobook of this, so I could listen to it on my way to work, which seems to be the way that I go through a lot of Victorian literature, and I do wonder whether that is something that Victorian literature was written for, was to be read aloud, because so often the rhythms of language and getting to hear them performed add a different aspect. And it's something I have enjoyed doing with all of the Anthony Trollope books. This might be because Timothy West is a fantastic narrator of Anthony Trollope, but I've enjoyed this blend of reading them and having them listen to me. I always finish by reading them because there's just something that satisfaction I get from closing the book. Margaret Hale ends up moving from the south to the industrial... Is it an industrial town? Yes, the industrial town of Milton, and becomes aware of the poverty of the people who work within the mills, which supposedly sets her in fierce opposition with John Thornton over his treatment of his employees. But that's masking a deeper attraction. A lot of love in Victorian fiction, I've found. Another book that I'll definitely be reading this month is Armadale by Wilkie Collins, and I am buddy reading this with Emily of Novell Novels. This, I believe, is salacious and scandalous and sensational for the Victorian era. Lydia Gwilt, bigamist, husband poisoner and laudanum addict, whose intrigues spurred a plot of this most sensational of Victorian sensation novels. She flings herself from the first-class deck of a Thames steamer, setting off events that lead to Alan Armadale inheriting Thorpe Ambrose in Norfolk. Romantic rivalries, espionage, counter-espionage, and greedy plans for murder ensue. Well, that does just sound like my last 3 months, I won't lie. Anyway, I will be definitely reading that. However, to be, I have got some other books here, because that's just who I am. We have 2 more Wilkie Collins. We have Poor Miss Finch, which is described on the back as an intriguing story about a blind girl, Lucilla Finch, and the identical twins who both fall in love with her. I was only considering this one because of the reading about disability. I still want to read it, but it might not happen this month. And one that I'm exceptionally interested in is No Name by Wilkie Collins as well, which sees Magdalene and her sister Nora finding themselves victims of a catastrophic oversight when their father neglected to change his will, meaning that they're orphaned and their inheritance goes to their uncle, so they're penniless. And so Magdalene decides she's going to do whatever she can to win it back, concocting a scheme that involves disguise, deceit, and astonishing self-transformation. You see, this is the thing about Wilkie Collins that I talk about, is that I've had so many hits and misses with them. So, didn't like The Haunted Hotel or The Woman in White, but really like The Moonstone and The Law and the Lady. So, we've got another 3 here where we could end up having 2 out of 3 that I like, or 2 out of 3 that I hate, or all 3 I despise. But isn't that just the way of things? I also added Oliver Twist to this TBR simply because I despise the film Oliver Twist. It comes from the fact that my dad, whenever the flaming musical Oliver is on, always has to watch it. You see me just punching this book. So I've avoided reading Oliver Twist for the longest time. And it's one of Dickens' shorter works at just 415 pages. I've decided that this is the year that I want to get this read, specifically because I would like to record a separate reading vlog for this, similar to when I did Destroying David Copperfield either last year or the year before. It was in 2020, and I want to go through and annotate and scroll over this copy because I found that really enhanced my reading experience of David Copperfield. And so I feel like if I'm not looking forward to Oliver Twist, it might help me appreciate it more. I've also added Dickens' best ghost stories on here. I won't be reading A Christmas Carol from this, but I will be reading some of the other stories in here. That is to fulfill the prompt about reading a short story, so I don't know whether I'll read the entirety of this book, but I would like to read a few stories from this one. And I might re-listen to my all-cast adaptation of Dracula again on Audible, but that's for a project that I'm going to be talking about in another video. I've talked about an ambitious TBR. I haven't been reading a lot, and here I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I've got at least 10 books. Maybe might have more. I've got at least a dozen books anyway, because I just remember the audio books I mentioned. And I've got another TBR as well for October. But that's just who I am. That's why I say that this is more a pile of possibilities. Very much a mood reader as well when it comes to reading, and I'm looking forward to being able to just pick and choose as and when I want to read something. I'm going to call this a day here. If you've read any of these books and recommend that I prioritise them over any others, then please feel free to let me know which ones in the comments. I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was just the sheer enjoyment of watching some glazed over northern and not really talk about much. Because until next time, that is all. Just to say, I really hope you're looking forward to Victober, because it is the most wonderful time of the year.